Welcome, Senator.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. For 5 years before this term, I actually sat on the Finance Committee, and I can honestly say this is the first time I've looked forward to coming to a Finance Committee meeting. So I appreciate your giving me the opportunity to come and speak about an issue that is, I know, near and dear to many of our hearts. And motivated by a genuine desire to move Michigan forward and to be constructive policymakers, my colleagues and I have spent the better part of the last year really studying the issues of education and economic development and what we can do as a state to make sure that the people of Michigan and the businesses of Michigan and Michigan as a whole is prosperous again. And I know that's a goal that every single one of us shares. We talked to business leaders and economists from across the nation who have told us time and time again that if Michigan wants to jumpstart our economy and encourage job growth, there's no better way that we can do that than to invest in the education of our people. The virtually universal conclusion has been education is economic development. And that's why I'm really glad that these bills were assigned to finance as opposed to education, because I do think that this is squarely in the wheelhouse of economic development in Michigan. It's clear that we now, more than ever, we need an action plan. We cannot keep doing the things that we have done and expect a different result. Michigan now ranks 42nd out of 50 in per capita state support of higher education. It's been a systemic disinvestment that has resulted in staggering debt for kids who can get to college and a complete barrier for too many Michigan kids. Michigan families now pay more to send their kids to state universities than families in almost any other state. And as state support continues to drop, more of the cost of college is shifted onto the kids and their families, resulting in what the Bridge magazine called the 21st century college tax. Unfortunately, this runs directly against the needs of the business community and of the people in our state, because economic studies have shown that by 2025, Michigan will need over 1 million additional college graduates to meet the job demand. That represents a 17% increase over the current trend. So it's time for us to be bold once again. And there's no place for us to better start than by giving each and every child in Michigan the chance to compete for a 21st century job. The Michigan 2020 plan, which is the series of bills that you have before you, does just that. It's a proposal that marks a significant investment in Michigan's future by positioning our state as a leader in higher education and workforce development. Michigan 2020 would provide all Michigan graduates, whether they're homeschooled, public schooled, or private schooled, with the opportunity to have up to 4 years of tuition and associated costs paid for at one of Michigan's community colleges or public universities. It would be a pact with our K-12 students that invests in their future as well as the future of our state by developing the most highly educated and highly skilled workforce in the nation. So study after study has emphasized the importance of a highly educated workforce in the economic vitality of any state in the 21st century. Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft, I know we all know who Bill Gates is, has championed the idea that it isn't tax rates that determine where a business will build and grow. It's where the greatest concentration of talent, of an educated workforce, is located. He wrote in an article that was entitled, "How to Keep America Competitive," quote, "If the United States is to remain a global economic leader, we must foster an environment that enables a new generation to dream up innovations, regardless of where they were born. Talent in this country is not the problem. The issue is political will." In one fell swoop, we can show that Michigan has the political will to invest in a program that will move Michigan's higher education system and workforce talent immediately to the head of the pack. We would leapfrog every other state in the nation. We can encourage business to locate and create jobs right here in our state because they would know that the talent is right here in the state, that the skilled workers are here in Michigan, and most importantly, that the commitment to investing in that talent and workforce is here in the state of Michigan. We can also send a strong message to our kids that their future is alive and well right here in Michigan. That not only will they have the chance to go to college, but that the jobs will be here for them once they graduate. So the state they've grown up in, they can continue to call home and maybe even continue to raise their own kids in their home state of Michigan. So this isn't a Democratic plan or Republican plan. It's a Michigan plan. It's backed up by data. Best of all, it's a plan that we can implement without raising taxes on individuals 1 cent. The legislation in front of you today relies on a thorough review of how Michigan collects taxes and ensures that loopholes that allow some companies to avoid paying taxes are closed. It doesn't use politics to guide those decisions. Instead, we would require a nonpartisan panel to follow metrics that will take those decisions outside of this political process, outside of politicians and outside of the lobby corps, and place them squarely in the best interests of the people of Michigan and our taxpayers. It's a plan that holds every tax credit accountable to the exact same level of scrutiny and also requires that state government hold itself accountable by opening up the contract process to transparency and scrutiny. I'm confident that through this process, we will uncover more than enough funds to pay for this particular investment, but we also might find that there are a lot of savings to be had as well for Michigan's taxpayers. I'm going to invite others up here to testify and to talk to you a little bit more about the economics of education, what it means to us as a state in global competition, but also personal stories of some students that have come here from out of town to share their story and their concerns as they go to college or anticipate the hope of going to college. You know, in fact, I would mention that students from all across the state have spoken out in support of the plan. And I was hoping to take a moment to show you a kind of a compilation of the video, but I don't see my mic's coming. We started a contest for the Michigan 2020 plan and asked kids around the state to compete and to tell us why higher education is important to them. And we just put a real short compilation video together.
In order to have the brightest future, what's the next step after high school?
I put in my work. I put in my efforts. I tried my hardest.
Many kids wish they could move on to college, but they have no way to finance it.
If we enact the Michigan 2020 plan, we can make that dream become a reality.
No student should have to stress about paying for college.
My parents were both laid off once at the same time, and we are still struggling for what we lost during that time.
I am certain that attending college would be in my best interest.
It's simple, it's effective, and it will work.
The Michigan 2020 plan.
Together, we can make this plan a reality and get Michigan back on track.
So obviously that's a little piece of propaganda we put together, but it stems from and it shows clips of entries that we've gotten from all across the state. In fact, every single member on this panel has a constituent who has entered a video to compete in this competition, and I would encourage you to take a look at it. The creativity and the talent of so many of our constituents is really exciting. And that was just an example. But I'd like to leave the committee with a hypothetical question before I turn the microphone over to our guest today. And I'm happy to stick around for questions after they've testified, but I know you need to be out of here by 2, so however you want to roll, Mr. Chairman. But the question is, what do we want our legacies to be here? You know, I hope you agree with me, and I hope that we don't want our legacy to be the legislature that turned its back on education and condemned our people to third world standards of living and crippled our universities. What I want us to say, and what I hope we can be able to say, is that we work together to really start the turnaround. I hope we can say that we voted to ensure that we passed a plan that reinvested in the people of Michigan and made Michigan's 21st century the success it can and will be. Everything we do here at the Capitol is about values. And hopefully our actions are supported by facts or evidence or science, or as our governor likes to say, metrics. I'm fairly confident that every single one of us ran on an education platform of some sort. So if we can agree on that as a core value and agree on the earnest desire to make sure that Michigan is competitive and thriving and prosperous, then I think we can figure out how to make sure we achieve this goal. For too long, we've let our annual budget debate trump real vision and real investment. Thomas Friedman says if you want to win a race, you need to take bold action and accelerate in the turn. And I say it's not about whether Michigan can afford to do this. I think it's the question of whether or not we can afford not to do it. You know, we hear too often about what we can't do here in Lansing, and this is a proposal that says this is something we can do. And I really appreciate your consideration, and I thank you for the opportunity to be here today. Like I said, there are a few people that have come from out of town to testify. I know you have their cards in front of you, Mr. Chairman. If that concludes my remarks.
Any questions? Thank you, Senator Whitmer.
Okay, thank you.
I would now like to call Lou Glazer from Michigan Future. Welcome, Mr. Glazer.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Michigan Future is a think tank. We got started 20 years ago. It's amazing. Really around the notion that we wanted to be the place that was trying to figure out how Michigan can be successful economically in a world that was being transformed by globalization and technology. So we had a sense then that's obviously been confirmed over the last couple of decades that sort of what made Michigan prosperous in the 20th century would not make us prosperous in the 21st century because the world was changing so fundamentally that we were fundamentally moving from a factory-based economy to a more knowledge-based economy. And we've really been trying to study over the period of time that we've existed sort of what are the characteristics of the places across the country that are doing the best. And we have done all of that in the context of trying to figure out how you recreate Michigan as a place with a mass middle class. We were the place really in the 20th century that built America's 20th century middle class, mass middle class, largely based on sort of high-paid, predominantly factory jobs that were lower skills that clearly were declining rather dramatically even when we started and have obviously declined even further over that 20-year period. So our goal has always been a high prosperity Michigan, a Michigan with a per capita income that's consistently above the national average in both national expansions and contractions. And as I said, it's a status that we enjoyed for most of the 20th century and have now entirely lost. In 2010, we were 13% below the national average in per capita income. It's the lowest Michigan's been since the Fed started keeping statistics in 1929. So that's been sort of the journey that we've been on, is trying to figure out which places are doing well and what characterizes those places that are doing well. And I think why I was invited to speak today is that what we have found in doing that work is by far the single best predictor of both a state's per capita income and a metropolitan area's per capita income is the proportion of adults with a four-year degree. The college attainment is now trumping everything in terms of explaining prosperity, broad middle class income at the personal level. Turns out that college attainment not only is driving individuals' income, but the places that have the highest college attainment rates also have the highest income for folks who do not have a college degree and the lowest unemployment rate for folks who do not have an unemployment degree. So there's this big spillover effect for everybody. So when we do presentations, we have always concluded them with the places with the greatest concentration of talent from any place on the planet win. That's sort of has been our basic conclusion about what's driving success. And as you can see in these sort of quick handouts that I did for you today, Governor Snyder in his talent message basically said better than we exactly the same thing with this quote that's up on this board over here, which is, in the 20th century, the most valuable assets to job creators We're financial and material capital. In a changing global economy, and changing because of globalization and technology, that is no longer the case. Today, talent has surpassed other resources as the driver of economic growth. So from our perspective, and given what the governor has said, this ability to prepare talent and also retain and attract talent, I think turns out the Trump if you don't do that well and you do everything else that we call economic development well, Michigan's going to continue to get poorer because as the governor says, talent is what's driving economic growth. So normally when I do these presentations, they're a lot longer. We normally go through sort of how well states are doing on income and then try to figure out sort of what correlates with that. So last night, because I knew I was talking about college attainment, I did for the first time ever the two charts that you have here, which starts with education attainment, not with income. So on the first chart, you have the top 15 states in the country in 2010 and the proportion of adults with a four-year degree. And then in the second column, you have their rank in per capita income, how prosperous are their people. All 15 are in the top 19 in per capita income. 12 are in the top 15. They're all above the national average. There is no other metric that you can find that has a correlation that looks anything like this. This is the most powerful predictor of income is college attainment. So once again, of the top 15 states in college attainment, all are in the top 19 in income. The only exception to this rule are Wyoming, Alaska, and North Dakota, all small population states who are benefiting from high energy prices. So if you have oil or natural gas, take advantage of it. But most states don't. And if you don't, the only path to a mass middle class to prosperity these days is college attainment. On the second chart, which unfortunately includes Michigan, you have the bottom 15 states in college attainment, Michigan being 36th. And as you can see in that chart, all of the states are below the national average in per capita income. 10 of the 15 are in the bottom 15 in income, other than Wyoming, once again, because of, in their case, predominantly, if I remember right, natural gas, who's sixth. Other than them, everybody else is 28th or lower. So the basic conclusion that we've reached in doing all of this work, sort of really a long period of time of trying to figure out in a global economy that's being fundamentally altered by technology and globalization, where advanced economies are becoming more knowledge-based. All the sectors of the economy that are growing the fastest are knowledge-based, and they're also the sectors that have the highest wages. That talent is trumping everything. That sort of concentrated talent is now, as the governor said, the primary driver of economic growth. Thanks.
Any questions? Senator Jansen.
Thanks, Lou. Appreciate it. Do you have anything like this that you've done with Michigan to look at regions? I come from the Grand Rapids area. I think I've seen this multiple times, but I think that also shows the same
exactly.
But in the state of Michigan.
Exactly. So, and I'd be more than happy to provide you with the data. We've got, I didn't want to sort of bore you with all the data that we collected. We got oodles now, but we have comprehensive data on every state, all the metropolitan areas in the country with populations of 1 million or more, which includes both Detroit and Grand Rapids, and then for all the smaller metros in Michigan. So we know college attainment and income. The correlation between college attainment and income at the metropolitan area level is as high as it is at the state level. So West Michigan, now that's the 7-county area. So it's Grand Rapids, Muskegon, and Holland. Of the 55 big metros in the country, is 44th in college attainment. And because of that, they're in the 50s in per capita income. Metro Detroit is like 39th in college attainment, and they're now 41st in per capita income. And so that it's the same pattern. And what matters to the state is that college-educated adults all across the country are concentrating in big metros. So if your big metros are not college-educated, your state's not, and at the moment our two big metros are not. So that really is the epicenter of the challenge in Michigan, is sort of Metro Detroit and Metro Grand Rapids. And at the moment, they have the same pattern that the whole state has.
Coming from the area, I would say I probably disagree with some of it, just because,
Sure.
There's turnaround happening in you've gone broader, you've gone to 7 counties.
Yeah, exactly.
If I would choose Kent and Ottawa,
Better
I
off.
think I would blow the doors off some of the numbers. I would hope. Maybe not, but it would be better because.
It would be. It is better.
But I don't want to get into that because that's not the issue. It is,
So I think we have the data at the county level too.
That's what I would be very curious about.
Exactly. So Don Grimes, who does this work with me at the University of Michigan, has actually created this database for every county in America. So, we can get that free for Kent and Ottawa. So Kent and Ottawa would be more educated than the rest of West Michigan.
Of those 7 counties,
Of those 7,
I can almost guarantee
for
you.
sure. For sure.
I'm sure
but I think they're still both below the national average.
That I'm sure of also. I do know that.
Yeah.
I just know I've done my part because my 4 kids are getting degrees.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and our family has had almost 0 in the family. So.
Oh, that's terrific.
So there, Senator.
I want to make you the standard.
Exactly. And they're staying in Michigan?
We're 3 for 3 right now.
That's terrific.
Senator Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's not often in our committee that you hear the vice chair say, "So there." This is a new, I'm not sure if it's a new high or a new low, but thank you, Mr. Glazer, for being here with us. Something you said was really striking to me about the impact that having an educated community has, not only on those folks with a 4-year degree, but also on others in the community. So I had the privilege of representing in the Michigan legislature the district with the highest number of citizens with a master's degree and above, and consistently one of the lowest unemployments in the state, unemployment rates in the state. So can you explain to us some thoughts on why that you called it the spillover factor, or spillover effect, like why unemployment is low and why wages for non-4-year degree holders are high?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I think the simplest way to explain it is going back to the 20th century economy. We all knew that places that had factories, that the presence of the factory was good for people who were in the community who didn't work in the factory. I mean, because they had lots of disposable income. They spent it in the community. As the factories collapsed, it wasn't only the factories that closed, but the businesses around the factories and all the rest of that stuff. Knowledge-based enterprises and knowledge workers are playing the same role right now, that they are the highest income individuals. They therefore spend money in their community, and so there's more economic activity. And they're also willing to buy sort of higher cost goods. I mean, I've used this line for a while that's sort of meant to be funny to some degree, but you'd rather wait tables in Manhattan than Ishpeming. It's the same job. It's just that people are willing to pay more for tips and whatnot. And the folks that have income in this economy increasingly are college-educated folks. So that's the driver. So it turns out that it is sort of highly statistically significant for non-college educated adults that their income goes up and their unemployment rate goes down. It's both in places that have the highest proportion of adults with a 4-year degree. That's what gets these charts. I mean, without it, you wouldn't have these almost one-to-one correlation. It's this powerful spillover effect that's really what's amazing.
Senator Beda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Lou, for testifying today. And just full disclosure, I'm a co-sponsor of this package, so I like it. I see the connection.
Right.
One of the economic issues that you have with education attainment, though, is not only do the people have a little bit higher income in general, but I think there's you could almost tap into creativity that leads to some entrepreneurship as well.
Exactly.
New types of jobs, new types of industry. We wouldn't want to have a lot of industries if we didn't have people that were educated in a way to develop that that natural intellectual curiosity that's developed, I think, and fostered in that. You handed out a couple charts with the 15 states and the 2010 proportion, and it says 4-year degree or more, and I was just kind of curious if it's broken down by if you have a further refinement of that on grad degrees or higher ed than past the 4-year degree.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I mean, we get that question a lot, which is whether certain degrees have a higher economic multiplier than others. We haven't found it. I mean, so it turns so it's pretty interesting. The places that are doing best economically, which have sort of these high concentrations of talent, are also characterized by high diversity in their concentrations of talent, so that they're able to participate in all industries kind of thing, plus all the entrepreneurship that is being driven by talent. So at least as far as we can tell, there really isn't a difference between, so for an individual, having a master's degree now or above is by far the most important way of making a good earning. So in the 90s, the gap grew between those that had bachelor degrees and others and everybody else. The last 10 or 15 years, the real growth has been with master's degrees. But in terms of the spillover effects sort of everybody's wealth, it's 4 years and above, period.
Senator Papa George.
I hear a lot of people talk about we're going from manufacturing to knowledge-based. Actually, aren't we going to manufacturing and knowledge-based? Because we're still making lots of stuff with fewer and fewer people.
Exactly. So there's a couple things, but that's exactly right. So agriculture, factory work, and I use factory work because we still get mixed up. So the way the definitions work these days is the word manufacturing means work done in factories. So all of the pre-production and post-production work that's done by Steelcase or General Motors is part of the knowledge economy. That's growing. It's the factory work that's still here. It's getting more and more productive, which means it needs fewer workers, but it's still here. It's just two things are true. One is that there's fewer workers. So you're not going to get, I took a group of people to the Ford Rouge plant, which still has public tours, which is actually a terrific tour. When I worked for Governor Blanchard in the 80s, that plant had on a shift 1,500 workers. Today, they make the same vehicle with 300 workers. So that's, and the 300 people are still making great income. It's just that there's 300, not 1,500. That's because of machines. So you want the factory work. It's just that there's not going to be as many, and you can't do anything about it. So if you're looking for middle-class jobs, it's going to have to come in something other than factory work, because that's increasingly being done by machines, not people. It's the knowledge work that's the high-wage work that's employing lots of people. Including in companies like General Motors and Steelcase and everything else.
Senator Beda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this is a fascinating discussion because we're talking about economic development. We're talking also sort of fulfillment of the American dream. People have an opportunity to do great things with their lives. One of the questions that occurred to me is kind of piggybacks on what Senator Papa George had mentioned about factory jobs and maybe the different types of jobs that we have out there. That if you have, talking with some folks that have been involved in employee searches or executive searches, one of the issues that you deal with is the more education somebody has, the more flexible they are as the job market changes.
Yes.
If you're specialized in one area that's low skill and low education versus somebody that may have a college degree or above, they're much more flexible as to be more nimble, so to speak, as the job market it changes. And the other observation to make, and when we're looking at the states that are a higher proportion of four-year degrees, I can think of a lot of localities in there. When you take a look at California, Silicon Valley, there's a multiplier effect within that own industry area that has some great benefits. And as policymakers in Michigan, and the concern of somewhat of a brain drain that we have in the state with the excellent university system, And it's probably a tribute to them as well that a lot of the graduates are picked up out of state. But at the same time, it's a concern that we want to keep them here in Michigan, and some of them do come back. Google, for example.
Right.
So this long rambly thing that I just said, getting to the point that I was going to make, was the fact that the more education you have, the more flexible you are in the job search part, and you'd agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I think the prime value of the 4-year degree is not the sort of technical skills that you learn, but it is this set of broader skills that allow you, in a world that's constantly changing, to be more agile. So, I mean, I've become friends with Jim Duderstadt, who's the former president of the University of Michigan and was the dean of the engineering school, and he's been telling me for years that sort of the half-life of an engineering degree now is less than 5 years. Sort of everything you learn is sort of gone, kind of thing. The value is that you have built a set of skills that allows you to learn the next set of skills. That's really the main value, and that stuff is only going to increase because, as much as it's scary for all of us, machines are continuously doing more and more of the work that humans used to do. So if people aren't able to adjust to that. If you're only good at job X, your chance that a machine's going to replace you is a lot higher than if you can adjust, and that's really the value of the education.
Senator Jansen.
Just quickly, Lou, and you can answer it later to
Sure.
me, maybe personally too, but did you use any kind of an indicator, what I would consider kind of the entrepreneurial factor? Because I got Amway, I got Meyer, I got these were started by folks that probably didn't even have a high school degree.
Yeah, no, exactly.
And so somebody started something, but then what you're saying, that's where I think that's where, yes, you knock it out of that's definitely
exactly.
part of that conversation.
Oh, sure. So our definition of talent is some combination of knowledge, creativity, and entrepreneurship. It's really all three. The only one that you can really measure is the knowledge by education attainment, but all three matter enormously. I think it turns out that that companies that are started that are competing in more than a local marketplace, more than the guy who opens the bookstore, well, bookstores are toast now, the restaurant or whatever, are more likely now to be started with people that have college degrees, but there are clearly lots of folks without college degrees that start them too. So entrepreneurship matters enormously.
Mr. Glazer, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I would now like to call Bob Jorth from Kalamazoo Promise. Mr. Jorth, welcome.
Thank you. Well, thank you for inviting me to speak, Mr. Chairman and Senators, about my favorite topic, which is promise. I've had the privilege of setting up and working for the Kalamazoo Promise since it was started a little over 6 years ago. And what I'd like to do is just share with you and then let you ask all the questions you'd like. The Kalamazoo Promise, as you know, is a universal scholarship program for graduates of the Kalamazoo Public Schools. The donors, who are anonymous, they're my bosses. I don't know who the heck they are. I'm sure I don't run around in their circle. That's about the only thing I'm sure of. They have said that this was created as a tool to transform the Kalamazoo community because they believe, really much as Mr. Glazer believes, that the vitality of a community is determined by the educational attainment of the people in that community. So that they decided to put their money where their beliefs were in this case and create this universal scholarship program to promote educational attainment within the Kalamazoo community. They have made it universal because they believe that we need to educate every child. That in the new knowledge-based economy, the jobs that we want to create and employ our young people in going forward are those good paying jobs, those jobs with the future, the jobs that can create more jobs, those kinds of things. So, in order to get the Kalamazoo Promise, it's very simple. Students only have to meet 3 requirements. They need to be enrolled in the Kalamazoo Public Schools for at least all of high school. They need to be a resident of the Kalamazoo Public Schools during that period of time, and they need to graduate with a high school diploma. They meet those requirements, they can use the Kalamazoo Promise. In the first 6 years, we've had 2,400 students access a portion of their Kalamazoo Promise awards. That represents 95% of the students who graduate from the 2 main high schools in Kalamazoo, Kalamazoo Central and Kalamazoo Loyal Norks, have gone on to college from the first 4 cohorts that graduated out of KPS who were eligible for the Promise. That is a level of college going that would be enviable in any community in the country, regardless of income. And for a community like Kalamazoo, the Kalamazoo Public School District, 70% of the students receive free and reduced lunches. It's a very poor district. We would not be talking about that kind of educational attainment without the Kalamazoo Promise. So that's the short description of the Kalamazoo Promise. The students can use the Promise for any post-secondary program at any of the state-supported community colleges or universities in Michigan. There's 43 schools that they can go to. We've had students at all 15 of the state universities and about 15 or 20 of the state community colleges. So I feel like I'm a father of these 2,400 kids. I get their grades, I get their bills, and it's quite a joyful experience most of the time. People want to know whether the Kalamazoo Promise is working. And that's the hard question to answer. I mean, it's a long-term commitment. The donors have set this up to go on forever. So they have committed to doing this for the current students, their children, and their children's children, and so forth. So it's a little early, actually, to be able to parse out the data and understand what's happening in Kalamazoo, even though it's been 6.5 years. Most measures of college attainment aren't done until 6 years out. So we're actually just reaching the first point in time where we can look at college attainment this spring. So from a scholarship standpoint, what we know at this point is about 80% of our students who go on to universities are retained after 4 years. At the community college level, it's much worse, but that is also a national phenomenon. Students at the community college level nationally, only about 50% of them make it to their second year. We're at a little over 60%, I believe. The easiest thing to measure that has changed in Kalamazoo is the Kalamazoo public school system. There has been an almost 25% increase in enrollment in the Kalamazoo public schools in the first 6 years. This is a district that was losing students for 17 years prior to this. So if the trend had continued, this increase actually ends up probably being close to a 30% improvement in enrollment. We see test scores improving. We see student attitude, parent attitude, staff, teacher attitudes all improving. All those have been measured by Western Michigan University's Evaluation Center. We've built new schools in Kalamazoo for the first time in 35 years, passed a couple of large bond issues. We get a better bond rate because of what's going on in the Kalamazoo public schools with enrollment so that more of those funds can go to education. If you look at unemployment, you look at housing, you look at population, it's much harder to parse out the Michigan economy effect on Kalamazoo and the Kalamazoo Promise, but what we do see a few bigger indicators. Kalamazoo always is very near the bottom or the best unemployment rate. Ann Arbor is obviously always the best. Lansing is usually second, and Kalamazoo is usually somewhere around third. And as Mr. Glazer pointed out earlier, if you look at college attainment rates in communities around the state, I think that bears that out. The population in the city of Kalamazoo has stabilized since the promise was announced. It was actually had a very small growth rate, I believe, the last half of the past decade, which may have been the only urban area in the state that had some growth. One of the areas of population growth in the Kalamazoo area, has been among young adults, and that is not because of any increase in enrollment at Western Michigan University. Finally, on the housing front, Southwest Michigan has fared much better, I think, than the rest of the state from a housing standpoint. I believe the Gazette published an article in the last 6 months or so comparing Grand Rapids and Kalamazoo had a slightly better housing value retention than Grand Rapids. So that's kind of the short description of the promise and what we've seen thus far.
Senator Beda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have in front of me an article from the Wall Street Journal from July 28th, 2008. It's entitled Class Act, and it talks about something that I think, when we're talking about the Kalamazoo Promise and when we're talking about education and the ability of somebody to go to school, it's a draw in itself. And I've seen in this article and a couple other places that one of the draws for new employers to move in, and they're specifically talking about Kaiser Aluminum Corporation, when they were doing their site selection thing of all the different things that they were looking at, one of the big draws was the Kalamazoo Promise, was the ability for their workers not only for their children to have an education that they can afford, but also the availability, I would suspect as I read through this, of having a more educated workforce. And it's something I just want to commend you for that. I want to bring that to the attention because education is a economic development tool. Probably, if when we go by Mr. Glazer's testimony as well, it's one of the biggest ones, more than anything else I think out there. And I wanted to bring that to the attention. I want to thank you for all your work that you've done with us too. It sounds like a great program. We're looking to see more data as time goes on this as well.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things the Promise does, we're obviously educating a new workforce. You attract businesses that want that type of workforce, and those businesses also bring a more educated workforce with them in some cases. And certainly every business in Kalamazoo has the Kalamazoo Promise as a benefit. And we see examples, hear examples all the time of people who are offered jobs outside of Kalamazoo who basically turn them down because if they have one or more students on the in the pipeline for the Kalamazoo Promise, they're going to ask those employers where those funds are that they're going to give up by leaving Kalamazoo. So it helps us retain our population and keep those skilled people in Kalamazoo.
Senator Jansen.
Bob, thank you very much. I'm curious, you gave some numbers of, I'm looking here. I was trying to find out what your percentages were for some of the numbers you mentioned before the Kalamazoo Promise. So you've made a huge change, but kind of what were they like before?
Well, part of the problem is a lot of these numbers, there aren't any pre-promise numbers. I mean, we as far as like a college going rate, that number has been a hard number for anybody to get a hold of. And there's been some big improvements on that statewide since the Promise was announced. Before the Promise was announced, the high schools kept track of college applications. And at that time, 85% of the students were applying for college. Well, applying and going are two big differences as I see every day. So I'm certain there's been at least a 10% improvement in the college going rate. My guess is it's probably closer to 20%.
Okay. And then more, and I don't know if you can answer it now, maybe later, but you have spent some amount of dollars, you know what that is.
Yes.
Have you tried applying that to Michigan, the numbers of Michigan? Or has anybody else said, okay, if you're spending X on these numbers that you have,
right,
what is something like the Promise going to cost the state of Michigan, or some quasi-wonderful group of people who come together and say, we'll match half of it if you come up with the other half? Has anybody done anything like that?
Well, the W.E. Upjohn Institute in Kalamazoo has worked on a model for the Kalamazoo Promise, and I know they've used it to help other communities look at emulating it. I don't know that they've ever done anything at a state level. Certainly Senator Whitmer's office has been doing that kind of that homework. So I would defer to them on those numbers. We have paid to date, we have paid $34 million in scholarships in the first 6 years, and we're paying out, this fiscal year we'll pay out approximately $9.5 million. Because of the funding issues and the tuition increases at the state universities, our expenses have not been going down, let's put it that way. There's been about a 40% increase in average tuition since the promise was announced 6 years ago.
Welcome to our world.
So we prefer not to balance the budget for the state.
Senator Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You were here for the earlier testimony. I think you heard Mr. Glazer say that that having folks with a four-year degree has this ripple effect throughout the community of more dollars being spent, of higher wages and lower unemployment. And you touched on decisions that that adults, that parents might make if they know that their kids are going to have an opportunity to attain higher education. Just curious if you could comment, because the Kalamazoo Promise is this wonderful incubator, I think, in some ways of what we're looking at, doing statewide here with this proposal in front of us. Can you tell us other things that maybe have happened in the community as a result of having this? Are you seeing parents not just making employment decisions, but are they more involved in their students' education? Do you see more community sort of activism?
Well, there's Western Michigan University, their evaluation center has done, I think, 7 papers trying to do some of that more subjective analysis of attitudes and what's happened in the community. And everything that they've studied to date shows that parents, staff, students are more engaged, more interested in their education, their students' education. There's also been some analysis of volunteer hours. Those have skyrocketed in the Kalamazoo Public Schools since the announcement of the promise. One of the things that having anonymous donors, in our case, did is it put the onus on the community to get involved and help support those schools and the students in it. And they understand that it's a gift for them to reciprocate, which is not a bad thing.
Senators, I would like to ask that we move this along because we do have several cards if people wanted to talk. Senator Beda, please make it short.
Thank you. Yeah, actually, just one other comment that I wanted to make that picked up. This has got to do a lot for your local real estate market, too, because I can just imagine people that live outside that area are going to be wanting to move in there, and having that ability to market a really kind of a unique thing. And maybe a quick comment on that.
Well, as I said, it's really hard to parse out the real estate market because of the collapse that's happened nationally, frankly. And what we have seen is that we've retained values better than the state and even our region. So initially, before the housing collapse, there was a real uptick in the housing values, but when everything else collapsed, we couldn't get those walls built fast enough to isolate ourselves, unfortunately.
Mr. Jor, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I would now like to call Natasha and Brandon Fitzgerald. Natasha and Brandon, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm Natasha Fitzgerald. This is my son, Brandon. Brandon will be graduating from Henry Ford II in June of this year. Brandon's planning on attending Grand Valley State University. Brandon's initial choice was to move to Atlanta and go to Emory University. And then he decided after touring the colleges here that he wanted to stay in our home state and attend college. But our biggest concern is our financial situation as far as needing to take out loans for him. We really want Brandon to go to college because my husband nor myself had the opportunity to attend college. So I'm a factory worker, and I worked for Ford, and with the big downturn for afford, I tried to go to school, but knowing that he needed me to support him in his college endeavors, I had to go to work at Chrysler, which I make half of what I made at Ford. So it's a really big burden on me knowing that I'm going to have to take out all of the loans for him to be able to go to school. So to me, this plan is a good idea for us because it'll give me some relief as to my financial situation and the financial burdens of him going to college and having to take out loans and then owing so much money once he's graduated and not knowing how he's going to pay these monies back.
Okay, I'm Brandon Fitzgerald. I attend Henry Ford in Sterling Heights, and I'm currently a senior. Preparing myself for college, I've done everything my parents, my principals, my counselors have told me. I've led clubs. I'm very involved in my school. I'm involved in theater. I help stuff in student council with my friend over there. I was on the track team freshman and sophomore year, varsity level. So I've done everything. I've taken AP courses, accelerated courses, classes to help make myself more marketable for college, but money's the only problem. I'm choosing to go to Grand Valley, and I'm one of the only people in my family who's ever gone away to college. I have a cousin who went to college and he's graduated now, but the amount of money that he owes in loans and debt, he could buy a house or Mercedes-Benz, something like that. So, I mean, just the amount of money that I would owe in debts, going to school for physical therapy, to get a bachelor's, master's, and hopefully even a doctorate, is just a lot of money, and it's scary. So.
Brenda, did you say you go to Utica Ford?
Mm-hmm.
My wife teaches there.
Where? Oh,
At Utica
Mrs.
Ford.
Brandenburg?
Yeah.
I saw the name and I go, oh, it's familiar.
Listen, do me a favor, okay? Tell her I said hello.
Okay.
I'll tell her that I met you.
Okay.
And if
Gonna
we,
be able to check on you.
Yeah.
Right.
do we have any questions? Thank the both of you for coming.
Thank you.
I now would like to call Pamela, I believe, Kreiner and Audrey Gerber. Pamela and Audrey, welcome.
Well, thank you for having us. Apparently, you gentlemen are a little imposing, so I may be reading my daughter's notes. She's a little shy right now. But again, my name is Pamela Greener, and I'm here today with my daughter, Audrey Gerber, who's finishing up 7th grade at Hazlitt Middle School. It's due to my personal struggles to obtain education throughout my life that I'm here to speak to you today. It is also due because of my personal struggles to obtain education that my children's education has been a top priority in my life. I happen to be the oldest of 12 children, so obviously that's a strain for a family. I'm fortunate enough right now to help one of my siblings, my 19-year-old brother Matt, who joined the National Guard in order to help fund his education. He's currently living with me, applying for college, as well as working a full-time job. But about 6 years ago, I wasn't so fortunate to help my other brother, Dominic. 6 years ago, I was working 50 to 60 hours a week, going full-time to MSU, while trying to raise my 2 children. My brother Dominic graduated from high school and wanted to try to go to college. Unfortunately, even with the grant money and subsidized loan money, he still was short on tuition and books, and even with the amount saved and the monies he earned through work study and through various odd jobs, it was a constant struggle for him. He used to drive every weekend to my house from Detroit to Lansing just to get gas money and stock up on food for the week and drive back. Needless to say, struggling with trying to work odd jobs and still keep making ends meet while he was going to college. After his first year, he did drop out, and he took a job in a factory at a different part of the state. Obviously, given the economic conditions throughout the last few years, he's struggled to be able to continue to keep employment. He's bounced from different factory job to different factory job. During that time, though, he has supported his girlfriend and put her through nursing school. But now he's looking at college again, and even given the circumstances being different, it's even more challenging now because now he has a house, he has car loans, they have his girlfriend's student loans. And even though he wants desperately to go back to school, now he makes too much money to even get the grants he did get before or the subsidized loans he was eligible for before. And the thought of giving up his full-time job to try to go back and obtain his educational goals, it's petrifying for him and for his girlfriend to think of the possibilities of will they be able to support themselves while going back to school and then paying for those education. His job currently does not have health benefits. It does not have retirement funds. It does not have life insurance. He knows that he needs to go to college because every job he applies for tells him he does not have a college degree. He's not applicable to even apply. I still have 5 more siblings at home who are under the age of 17 that want to go to college. Every chance I get, I push how important and how crucial it is for them to go to college, to be able to, obtain their goals and be able to have a life here that's not going to constantly be worried about can they get a job, can they support themselves. But the less children that are in my parents' home, the less grant money and the less subsidized loans that, again, are available to them. My parents make a very small amount of money. Their income's very low considering even the state levels. And the less children they have, the less chance there is for them to go to college without having to accrue large interest student loans. I know my family situation is not very unique in that I've met many, many individuals in being able to say my personal goals to attend college and graduate and move forward with getting a good job. But all through that time, I've met individuals who have struggled, either because their parents weren't able to financially support them through college or they weren't willing to, and they weren't able to get the grants or loans necessary and able to go. And a lot of them either ended up dropping out of college, unfortunately made decisions to prolong education, which as you prolong education, unfortunately, a lot of times you end up just giving it up. I know myself, it's hard to justify to them when I'm paying more in student loans right now than I am in my mortgage. It is very difficult for people to understand why you should go to college. But on the other side, I make a very good income. I'm able to pay my bills. And because of that, I am able to help my children hopefully realize their goal of education in the college arena. So it is just, I am very, very happy to see that this is a proposal that's at least being talked about, that this is something that's being discussed. And I would just like to encourage all of you to keep the topic going and to keep the proposal pushing forward, because the amount of possibility that's available to even just the individuals I know, if they would have had that opportunity, I mean, it's just immense to think of where they could have gone if they didn't have to worry about that financial burden. Do you want to do it? She's very scared right now. I guess when I explained this to her, she wasn't quite aware of how imposing this might be. But she had written down some notes earlier today, so I'll speak on her behalf if that's okay. Audrey had written down that in preparation for college, she's working very hard, studying very hard, trying to get good grades and to continue to volunteer so that she has a chance of getting into some good colleges. And I can attest, she's straight A's right now, so she's doing very well. She really wants to go to Michigan State or the University of Michigan. We're hoping Michigan State. She knows that there might not be quite enough money, although her dad and I are trying very hard to put away enough money for her and her brother to go to college. She realizes that it might not be quite enough, and she's willing to work and try and do whatever she needs to do to be able to go. And she really wants to stay with her friends. They all want to go to the same college, so. She'd be super happy to be able to go to college and become a doctor. She knows that she's probably going to have some debt, and she's willing to get a job to help pay for whatever she needs to pay for. And she'd be extremely happy knowing that the chance to go to college and to get a degree so that she'd be able to get a job in the profession that she wants to work in, and that hopefully she'd make up the money that she lost in going to college, which I think she means that she invested in going to college. And she just put again that she would be willing to work really hard to try to pay her bills so she doesn't have a lot of debt at the end. So I think that's pretty much it. Yeah? Okay. Well, we really appreciate the time to talk with you today, and again, so happy that you're at least having these discussions.
Thank you both for coming. I would now like to call Raleigh Van Fossen. Welcome, Raleigh.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Sir Chair. My name is Raleigh Van Fossen, and currently I'm a freshman at James Madison College at Michigan State University, majoring in social relations and policy and secondary education. I came here today to share my reason for why I am in support of the Michigan 2020 plan. As a freshman, I have just been hit with the worry of how to pay for my future college education. I can't even imagine what this year's seniors graduating from college are feeling about having entered the career world with debt. Paying for college simply out scares me. In this year alone, I will have spent roughly $23,000 on my tuition fees. Coming from a single-parent home, with my mom supporting me at MSU and my older brother at Western, paying for college has been a difficult task for her. Let me be that last class that has to worry about paying for college and having debt. I am in support of the Michigan 2020 plan because it offers a way of relief and support for students and parents. When I graduate from college, I don't want to have to leave this state. I want to be able to have my kids experience all the great things that this state has to offer, just as I got to, except for one thing, and that is having to pay for college. Michigan has some of the finest schools across the globe, and I know we all know of that. The University of Michigan, Michigan State University, Wayne State, Michigan Tech, and many, many more. Right now, though, we are paving a path for our high school graduates to leave this state after college. This state will not attract jobs without an educated workforce, and then our economy will not grow with students are fearing the need to have to move away. The Michigan 2020 plan takes those stresses and burdens away from having to pay for college. This plan will allow students like me to focus on my education. They will no longer be afraid of graduating and entering the workforce with massive debt. Let me ask you, how is it smart planning to be having our students graduate from college and expect them to find a job with debt hanging over their shoulders? That doesn't make sense, does it? That idea is something that kids should not have to face. And finally, the Michigan 2020 plan offers college graduates the option to continue to live and prosper in this fine state. So I'm here today to ask you to support the Michigan 2020 plan and all of its efforts to save the students here in Michigan. And I thank you for hearing me.
Thank you, Raleigh.
Thank you.
Raleigh, hang in there.
Oh.
Okay, man. I would now like to call Doug and Connor Pearsall. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to speak to you about the 2020 plan and what it might mean to us. My name is Doug Pearsall. I live in East Lansing with my wife and 2 sons. This is our older son, Connor. He will graduate this year from East Lansing High School. And he'll be attending Michigan in the fall as a freshman. So we're very happy for him. That was his first choice for colleges. He did look at a few others. His highest priority, of course, was academics, but there were some other things to consider. For us, of course, the cost of college was a factor to consider. And though we were very happy and proud of him when he did get that acceptance letter, in the back of my mind, until the financial aid package came through, you know, we're wondering, how are we going to pay for this? So we're kind of a typical middle-class family, 2-income. We own our home. We bought it in 2004, and everything was going great. We're planning for college. We're saving. We're putting away money in the Michigan Education Savings Plan, which is, as you know, it's a 529 savings plan for both of our kids. And then, you know, like many families, I think, in Michigan, our family was hit by the economic downturn. Our home has lost 40% of its value. And my wife's position as a curriculum administrator in a charter school was cut due to budget reasons. And so now our earnings are substantially less than when we were planning and saving for college, and we have not been able to save in the past few years. So, you know, we're keeping our fingers crossed, and when the financial aid package did come through from the University of Michigan, we're very fortunate that they met us about halfway in terms of what they could provide, and we qualify for enough loans that we can probably make ends meet, at least for this year, given what we have saved in the MESP and other savings. However, next year is far less certain. And in 2 years, when our younger son is going to be attending college, then, of course, we'll be really stretched. So we have been saving and making sacrifices through the years. We're still looking for ways to cut costs so that we can continue to save up to pay for college. What the 2020 plan would mean for us is that not only would we have some assurance as to how our sons could go to college, and college has always been the priority for us. My wife is an educator. We both attended college, so this is a high priority for us. It would mean that we could worry less about how they were going to afford college, and we could begin to pay off some of the debt that we have accrued. And so it would not only benefit the state in many ways, as you've already heard today, it would benefit families like ours that are stretching to make ends meet and worrying about how to pay for college.
Yeah, I'm Connor. I'm a senior at East Lansing, and I haven't really struggled through high school. You know, I did my work. I got good grades. I played. Sorry. Okay.
People do that all the time. Don't worry
about it. All right. Anyways, you know, I played 3 varsity sports throughout my high school career. I've had 5 AP classes, I think, and I've managed to get a 3.82 GPA. And it's always been a goal of mine to go to the University of Michigan. I've wanted to do that since I was 5, I think. And when I got accepted there, it was a relief. And then we started worrying about college tuition, and luckily the financial aid package that he mentioned, it did take a lot of the stress off because most of the tuition was covered, and my grandparents and them had been saving a lot of money for us. But it's farther down the road that I'm worried about. You know, towards junior and senior year in college, I'm not going to be able to focus I'm not going to have that money that they have saved up because I've used it already. And then after that, I have to go to grad school, and it's not, it doesn't really feel very secure right now getting an education at college, because afterwards I'll have to worry about debt and then getting a job, and that's worrisome because, you know, I don't want to enter the job market with debt or anything like that. And that has influenced my decision as to what major I chose, and, you know, I want to be a chiropractor, but that requires an extra 4 years of grad school. And after that, the job, I'd have to get a job, actually. So it's just a lot to think about. And the 2020 plan, it would make college a lot easier for me than I think it's going to be right now, because I'd be able to focus more on what I'm doing, what my goals are, and basically how to pay for college.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both for coming. I would now like to call Josh Reisner. Reisner. Okay, sorry about that. Welcome, Josh.
Thank you, Chairman Brandberg, fellow senators. My name is Joshua Reisner, and this Saturday I'll be graduating with my bachelor's in public administration from Saginaw Valley State University. So, go Cardinals. When I was in high school, I went to the public high school in the city of Saginaw, and I ended up graduating from the Catholic high school out in the township. And among that time, I was able to be exposed to some of the finest high school students in the state of Michigan in terms of academic achievement. I went to high school with International Science Fair winners, with people who received full ride scholarships to the Michigan State University, University of Michigan, because of perfect ACT scores. So I grew up in a culture of academic achievement, if you will. My own high school credentials had over 3.9 GPA, had 30 on the ACT. I could have gone to really any university in the state of Michigan I would have liked to, which leads me to why I went to Saginaw Valley, and that was precisely because of the financial complications of going to universities in Michigan at this time. When I was looking at schools, I really made it a priority that I wanted to graduate debt-free from college. And I'm a rare bird. I am debt-free right now. I have not a cent to my name, but I'm debt-free. Which brings me to why this plan would have been a godsend to me. My dad actually lost his job the week of my graduation, which my parents looked at me and they said, "Thank God you chose Saginaw Valley because it has the lowest tuition in the state. We can't help you out, obviously, but you have enough money saved up from working, and, well, we'll let you live here in the basement and not pay any rent." So still there, but the main problem is with the placement of Saginaw Valley is that it's not in a it's in a metropolitan area, but it's not an urban area. If you look at universities like U of M, Michigan State, Western, Aquinas, Grand Valley, and the greater Grand Rapids area, there's a large concentration of talent that has access to large companies in an urban area. So companies move to the talent, and talent moves to the companies. It's kind of a give-pull from, at least from my amateur observation of the way our state economics works. So now when I'm doing my job searching, I'm finding that there is just not enough talent in the Saginaw area for me to stay there. And I would really love to stay there with my parents. And I would love to stay there with other relatives, who are getting older that I'd like to help out. But that's just not a possibility right now. And since I don't have money to look at relocation costs, I'm in a pickle, so to speak. And so with this plan, what I see is I see an opportunity to allow people, like my younger sister Hannah, who's a freshman in high school right now, for her to be able to have the freedom to go to whatever university she would like based on her academic achievement, not on financial complications. And then the other part of this is when it comes to choosing a career that you want to study. I studied public administration because I'm very passionate about helping people like to go into the nonprofit field, but of course, it does not pay well, which, you want the best and brightest people to go to where their talents lie. And if they have to put off going into a field where their talents lie, you're not doing anybody a service. You'll end up with people who went to med school that don't know, where your tibula is, which is a problem when you break your tibula. So, you really want to encourage people to go to the university that would best fit their talents, allow them to pursue their studies to the fullest of their ability. I worked all the way through school. It's not easy holding two jobs because both of them want to be your number one priority. I skipped a fair number of classes, turning assignments late. I still managed to have over a 3.3 GPA, which, considering what the time I put into both studying and working, I feel is a fair accomplishment. But it's something, though, that made me pass up certain opportunities on the academic side in order to accomplish this. And so I feel that by implementing the Michigan 2020 plan, we can help future generations go into the fields that they would really like to and be able to accomplish their dreams. And really that would help us move forward and remain a leader in innovation for the world. So thank you for your time.
Senator Jansen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, young man, I don't know what you're going to do in your life, but I have a feeling that what you just went through, the entrepreneur I was just looking for that we have a lot of in West Michigan, is probably where we'll see you someday, because this would have been really nice, but I think some of the things that you just came out of you over this process, you have learned a lot, and it wasn't easy, was it?
No, and that's one of the things that I've always wanted. I've worked since I was 16. Right now, being unemployed, well, that's another story. But being unemployed, looking for an actual job, it really is disheartening. Because I look and see all of my counterparts who were able to go, they had to choose between having all of this debt, but having a valuable internship, or working retail jobs and not having debt. And so that's really where it's at. So no aversion to hard work, but at the same time there is a time and place for a hand up. So
anyway, I appreciate your testimony very much, and what I would consider a very strong example. Maybe not the best under the circumstances that people want to have to go through that, but I just think quite a good story. Thank you.
I concur with Senator Jansen. Senator Warren?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Josh, for telling your story. My comment is to you, but it's also to Brendan and Connor and Audrey and your parents that came to be with you all today. This is such an important thing that you're doing, to be part of this process and to share your stories, because the stories that you shared are stories that are echoed throughout all of our districts up here. We all have constituents who are struggling to meet their mortgage payments and think about higher education and to balance economics and pursuit of a better life for their children, and as students to pursue that education that will lead to a better job and hopefully a better quality of life for all of us here in Michigan. And it's really important. So I'm glad that you did it, and it's also very striking to me to hear comments. I mean, a lot of us here, I think, probably worked our way through college as well, and over time, though, the cost of college has gone up so much that even in the number of years since some of us graduated, it really does have a very disproportionate impact, I think, on what people can do once they graduate to delay sort of the natural maturation that we want. We want students to be able to go to college, to graduate, to start a life of their own, to buy a home of their own, to get married, to have families, to stay here in Michigan, hopefully as many as possible, and to hear stories about people with mortgage payments that cost less than their college student loan debt, or someone like you to tell the story of needing to to stay home to be able to afford all that. I think it's really important for us to hear those really personal stories as we try to make policy that fits the goals of this state and the individual needs of our constituents. So I appreciate that you did that. And Mr. Chair, I appreciate that you allowed this committee the time to consider this issue and to hear these stories, because I do think this is one of the sort of most pressing and pertinent issues for Michigan. If we're going to get back on track economically, solving this puzzle of how to make a higher education affordable and attainable to all of our students that are bright and willing to work hard to go get it, it's one of the biggest challenges we have. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for letting us start this conversation today.
Josh, thank you very much. I would like to thank everyone who drove in today and attended and spoke. I'd like to thank Senator Whitmer, and I'd like to thank the members of this committee. This meeting is adjourned.